Welcome to the Latin MedTech Leaders Podcast, a conversation with leaders who have succeeded or plan to succeed in Latin America. Please subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, etc. Today, our guest is Luiz Levy, or Levy. How do you pronounce your last name, Luiz?
Levy.
Levy. All right. Luiz is Director, Quality and Regulatory Affairs at Emergo in Brazil. He has over 10 years of medical device industry experience, primarily focused on high-risk devices, including implantable devices, electrical, medical equipment, and disposables. Luiz's expertise is in performing local and foreign US, Europe, Japan audits to prepare companies for ANVISA inspections, and also assisting companies during ANVISA regulatory filings, compiling medical device and IVD applications, clinical data review, compiling clinical evaluation reports, and compiling and peer review market access reports. Additionally, he teaches courses on ANVISA, medical device and IVD regulations, and quality system requirements at two postgraduate institutions in Brazil. So, Luiz, it's great to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for the invite, and I hope this will be a good talk for our listeners, and they learn more about the Brazilian markets, and I can give you my 2 cents on the requirements and everything else.
Awesome, Luiz. So let's get started. Could you please tell listeners how you got involved with Emergo, how you got involved with the medical device industry in the regulatory field? Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your history.
Yeah, on the medical device side, I started in 2008 on a medical device distributors. This was the first time that I have an experience of selling medical devices. So I was selling implantable devices, which is a very complex selling system in Brazil. And then I decided to grow my career and move to a manufacturer because I was really looking forward to put in place what all the technical backgrounds that I have in my graduation and also my post-graduations on industrial management and quality management system. And I stayed there for a few years. So I took over the regulatory affairs and quality assurance. So I help companies to address their quality system to meet Brazilian regulations and US regulations. And I also moved to another factory that I was able to manage more than 3 facilities in Brazil, 3 factories, which was a very nice experience. And after I stayed for almost 4 years on a factory, then I moved to Emergo, which is a consulting firm that it's amazing because we are exposed to a lot of different types of technologies, which is great for whatever a person that wants to learn and do different things all the time, which is very nice. So, and Emergo, and I manage the quality and regulatory affairs system, and I also do quality audits, both for Brazil, for example, because in Brazil, if you want to if you are trying to register a high-risk device, sometimes ANVISA decides to go perform an inspection by their own, which is one of their requirements. So it gives me the opportunity to assist companies abroad, so in China, Japan, Europe, so travel all over the world and help our clients to navigate all of these challenges that the country have. But it's also it's good to work in such a challenging scenario. Which
yes,
is
and
awesome.
Diverse as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, as you said, you're very much exposed to all different types of innovative technologies coming to Latin America, which is great. It's a great position to be in.
And it's
Emergo
amazing,
is a great
right?
company.
Yeah, and it's amazing. So we see the new technology coming, whether from regulatory roadmaps, so the clients reach out to us understanding what will be the requirements to reach the market, and also working on the application. So we seen that the technology trends, for example, we're starting to see devices using artificial intelligence coming to Brazil.
Yes.
So a lot of companies investing in wearable technologies because the customer, actually the people are more, they want to more self aware about their health. So there are a lot
Yes.
of companies investing in different types of technology, and there's a lot of
Mm,
opportunities around these areas, and also a lot of potential issues from a regulatory side, not only in Brazil but in the entire planet. For example, lack of regulation or artificial intelligence, so cybersecurity, which becomes a
yes.
major
Yeah.
major challenge, not only for us on the regulatory side, but also for the regulator, which they also need to keep
Yeah.
evolving, understanding these new technologies.
Usually regulators, we're jumping ahead because that was actually one of the questions that I had for you. Usually, but we can talk about that later. But usually, the regulator is behind the industry a few years, right? And the
Exactly. Yeah.
regulations are not always up to speed with what's coming
Yeah, it's
in
tough. I can say
companies.
it's tough. I can, let's say, can feel their pain because sometimes we on the consulting side we need to also uh, get familiar with the technology, and then
Yeah,
we know the requirements, but every technology has its own particularities. But I see that,
yeah.
especially artificial intelligence, it's gonna challenge not only Brazil but entire world because of
Yes,
the
yes.
lack of
Yeah.
regulations and, for example, technologies that use deep learning, which don't
Hmm.
necessarily need like the company to the software evolve themselves. So how you control these? So
Wow.
what the
Yeah,
regulators
exactly.
is gonna check?
New
So
versions. Every day
exactly.
there's a new version.
Exactly. So how you challenge
Wow.
the software to make sure the technology is still safe and effective, which is
Yeah.
the main goal. So it's amazing the technology, but there's a lot of things to do on this regard. On this regard.
Okay. Okay. All right. So you touch on a few topics that I wanted to touch upon, but one of the questions that I usually ask my guests during the beginning of the episode is about trends. What trends do you see happening in Brazil or in Latin America, specifically in Brazil, that are relevant to our discussion today? We can talk about political trends, economic trends, epidemiological trends, etc.,
Yeah.
regulatory trends
Yeah.
that you see are relevant to the discussion or to medical device companies that are looking to enter Latin America. Can we talk about that, please?
Yeah, sure. From an epidemiology standpoint, so you can look at the COVID situation, which hit us very hard. So we have a lot of, so we have a more than 200 million people. So we have almost 500,000 deaths. So it hit the country very hard. So for the medical, for the healthcare system, because in Brazil, it's a little bit different from other countries. For example, in Brazil, health is a constitutional right. So every Brazilian citizen has the right to have access to the actual healthcare system. But then this presents a challenge in terms of COVID because you have private and also the government companies reaching have access to these types of technology. So a lot of things have been done over the past year. So the regulator, ANVISA, they made a lot of changes, which was good to uh, to help this technology to reach Brazil. For example, COVID tests, so the PCR, rapid test, the ventilators, which was very much needed. Um, so for almost 8 months, ANVISA had a regulation that um, uh, they facilitate the market entry, so we can actually.
Emergency use authorization. That's how the FDA calls it. Yeah.
Exactly. So they have a regulation that exempt a few requirements for a certain period, and they also they focus that revision. They prioritize the revision of this type of products, which help a lot the country. So on this on the COVID situation, there is a lot of things still needing in the market. So now we are seeking for vaccines, right? So we have the rich countries that is pretty much very much more than 50% or very close to 50% of the population. In Brazil, we are still only 20%. So we are still a long way to be in a health situation. On the technology trends, as I mentioned to you, it's wearable technology is something that a lot of companies are investing, and there is a lot of need because we have the obvious trend of what people want to have in a more friendly environment, right? So environmental friendly technologies. and also they want to be more aware about their own health status. So the pandemic situation, they push it for the telehealth to be more used, and these, as a consequence, needs this type of technologies for the doctors on the other side to make medical decisions based on a safe and effective health solution. So this is obvious a trend. A lot of companies are very much investing on this. So, for example, you have new technologies over the glucose monitoring system. So in the past, people only finger their prints and put their blood. Now you have sensor that stayed in your skin for 15 days, and you can see all the time. You can also run an ECG during your watch. So it's something that who thinks in the past people doing a pulse oximeter for the COVID. So pretty much everyone has these on their own home. So this type of technology and also novel technologies as use of artificial intelligence, it's an obvious trend because all the health system in the world needs more effective solutions. And this technology, especially artificial intelligence, they will be with us for a long time. And as I mentioned to you, there is a trend of need a regulation on this type of
To
technology.
keep
So
up with the innovation. Yeah,
exactly, even
yeah.
a standard, right? So to help the companies, for example, what happens if the softwares understand, for example, a software that does the diagnostics, so a software that does that. What happens if they teach incorrectly and then it gives the wrong diagnosis to the doctor? So
Yes.
how you control that? So it's something that we already see some movement on the FDA. So FDA released a paper on it, and also the MedTech also released a document, and there are some movements about standards, but we still have a long way to go to make this a reality and to assist companies. And we are in a hurry because technology has keep evolving all the
Yes.
time.
Every day is faster and faster. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
So
two comments on that. One is I recently heard that Apple is preparing a new version of the Apple Watch, and is going to come out with glucose monitor and also blood pressure monitor. So imagine, I mean, everybody
yeah,
has a medical device in their pocket or in their wrist.
yeah,
So it's just amazing.
and you see, it makes sense. So unfortunately, due to the COVID, we have isolated in our own places. So people are getting more diabetes. So more people are
Yeah.
diagnosed with diabetes, more people diagnosed with high blood pressure, and this
Yeah.
creates a demand on the market. So because of COVID, a lot of people are afraid to go to the hospital. So the telemedicine needs these types of technology for the doctors to have data or to make decisions on a treatment or on a medical exam. So this is very much needed, and it makes a lot of sense for them to invest on it.
Exactly. You're bringing up a good point. I mean, Brazil, like any other country in Latin America, has an emerging middle class, is increasing,
Yeah,
is adopting American standard of living, right? Eating
exactly,
fast food, not exercising that much, workaholics. And now
exactly.
with the pandemic, people are working from home or working actually more
Yeah,
than
exactly.
before. And the mental health situation is terrible.
Yeah,
So things are changing a lot. I mean,
exactly.
there's a lot of demand for medical care. I
Yeah,
think the two industries that are benefiting from the pandemic are technology in
yeah,
general, and everything digitized, virtual,
exactly.
telecommunications, networking, etc., and also healthcare. I
Yeah.
mean, healthcare technologies. So
Yeah. So healthcare in Brazil was one of the few areas that is still increasing. So every year, so if I'm not wrong,
okay,
it was a 5% increase last year, despite all of the crisis that COVID reached
okay,
out to us. So it's still growing despite all of the challenges in terms of in Brazil is a very challenging tax system. So companies that are trying to establish a company in Brazil needs to be very self-aware about those requirements because these are the
yeah,
ends impact when you want to sell, where you want to sell,
yeah.
and how you want to
Mm.
sell it. Exactly. So depends on your strategy. All of these impact made a huge impact. for your
Okay.
profitability and also
Okay.
even from the logistics standpoint, because it can be very complex to move your device, depends on your device storage and conditions. So it's very much like I said, it's a huge country, so a good strategy is a key point for you to succeed in the market. And opportunities have a lot for all areas inside the healthcare, but a good strategy is a key point. Selecting the right partner, it's critical because people, a lot of companies, they see the distributor as just a company that will sell a device, but it's much more than that. This this company will represent your brand. So I see in Brazil a lot of issues that uh, distributor manufacturers select a distributor that went out of business, and then they lost Brazil because in Brazil you have the registration holder. So the company that submit the registration, they own the registration. So I saw companies that were out of distributors out of business. That a result, manufacturer couldn't export anymore. So I saw that distributors with a poor quality system or a poor that as a consequence they made errors on the customer access, helping the customers to understand the device, because sometimes I can see a lot of issues you have on the market when you start with complaints are associated with usability. So the interactions between the customer and the solution. So these are solved with training. So the proper attention to your customer is key to avoid problems, to reduce the complaints. So so that's why it's so critical for you to choose your right partner to navigate in Brazil, because it can be quite challenging.
Yeah, it's a chess game. It's not just as simple as just meeting somebody at a trade show and shaking their hand and having a couple of beers. It's not
Exactly.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes way beyond that. You have to look for their reputation, their financials, their stability,
Exactly.
the coverage, national geographical coverage, because Brazil is a huge country. I mean, you may have, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 regions, different cultures,
Exactly.
different dialects, and so it gets a little
Exactly.
tricky.
For example, a typical mistake. So companies went to Brazil, they go to the trade shows, right? So they
Yeah,
start meeting a lot of distributors, but there is no registration. So
yeah.
it doesn't matter. So the distributor can be very much looking forward to sell your product, but how you gonna sell if the device is not registered? And in
Yeah.
Brazil, you have different routes. You have notification route, which is for the low risk devices, which can
Okay.
be finalized pretty quickly. So I would say
Okay.
in 30 days you can start
Okay.
selling. But we also have the high risk devices for class 3 and class 4, that you
Okay.
have the BGMP inspection, so ANVISA inspection process, and
Yeah.
also the high risk, the device application analysis could take up to 1 year. So in one
Yes.
year, a lot
Yeah.
changed. So you may try to look
Yes.
at a distributor that look a long time ago and
Exactly.
maybe out of
Yes.
business,
They're
and they
probably out of business. Yeah.
exactly,
Selling French fries on the street.
exactly,
And also, I understand there is a cost or economic analysis you have to do on high risk devices about
yeah.
pricing and all that. You also have to do. So it may take you about 3 years sometimes to register a device in Brazil. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
High
depend.
risk.
Yeah, yes, I would say not 3 years. So I would say 1 year, because your device may require additional certifications, not only for ANVISA. For example, certain device require um, Anatel certification with a wireless. Any device have wireless and Bluetooth. For the telecommunication, we have a certification in Brazil for that, and we also have the Metro certification. So devices that have 60601 applicable for them. So electrical medical devices, they require a certification which is done by a certification body accredited by Emetro, which is another Brazilian Brazilian authority entity. So, and then this could take some time because you also have to request the GMP from Visa. And then if you have MDSAP already, so this could be very quick because Visa accept MDSAP certificate and
So they don't
that's
have
it.
to
Yeah,
travel and visit the factory. Okay. Hmm.
exactly. But you also have to take into account the Metro certification that could take to 1 to 3 months. and you can only submit your application once these certifications are completed.
Yeah.
When then you submit, and you have ANVISA
Mm.
has a 90-day period to analyze applications, such as FTA, for example.
Okay.
And then they start the analysis. They may have some questions, as any
Yeah.
other country, and they will
Yeah.
issue additional information requests, and then you have to respond, and they will start the revision again.
Okay.
I would say
Okay.
1 year is it's a good estimate, but
It's a good estimate.
uh,
Okay. 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 I've heard 3, but
yeah,
you're the expert.
yeah. In the past, it was in the past,
Okay.
because in the past, so there was a huge backline of inspections, and also in the past, ANVISA wanted to inspect all factories. But this
Hmm.
changed a few years ago, so now
Okay.
ANVISA conduct a risk-based approach on the inspection
Okay.
request, and
Okay.
they may either accept your international inspection reports, and then issue the certificate without traveling to your
Okay.
facility,
Very good. Yeah.
or they can either do an inspection with a reduced audit scope. So instead of staying 5 days in your facility, they can stay 2 or 3 days. So for them, this helped them to reduce this backlog, and now they are
Sure.
pretty much in 1 year. So they is their timeline currently to schedule if they decided to do the inspection and go on site. Yeah, and also with the MDSAP, so a lot of companies. So if you have MDSAP, ANVISA will never go to your facility. So
Mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
makes the process much quicker. And
Okay. And
then
MDSAP includes Canada, United States, Japan,
yeah,
Brazil. What else?
Canada, United States, Canada, Australia, and Brazil.
Australia. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. All right, Luis, going back to the trends, you're already talking a little bit about that, but I want to get a little deeper into this topic. What political trends do you see happening in Brazil that are beneficial to the medical device business? What I really mean is, I just heard, for example, that Brazil is applying to be an OECD member. Do you know that?
No, I don't know this.
Yes, it just came in the news a week or two ago, which is great because the first country in South America was Chile after Mexico, then Colombia, and Peru is in the ascension path, and Brazil now is a candidate, which is great because correct me if I'm wrong. I think it will align Brazilian policies to international standards and guidelines. The OECD, as you know, is the club of wealthy countries around the world that they promote best practices for government, for social issues, educational issues, etc., regulatory issues, etc.
Oh, nice.
So, do you see a trend happening in Brazil to improve that regulatory process, to make it faster, to make it more efficient, to make it cheaper? I don't know.
Yes.
Just is there anything happening politically speaking to have patients have faster access to medical innovation?
Yes, yes. So ANVISA made lots of change over the few years, the last few years. So, for example, in the past, you have to wait for the application approval. So each application, regardless of the risk of the device, you had to wait, let's say, at least 90 days to have this pub- published in the official diary, which is the official correspondence of ANVISA, and start selling. So what ANVISA did, ANVISA they changed the regulatory pathway. So instead of they implement the notification system. So it's pretty much the company submit the application, and ANVISA not necessarily they review your application. So your application after ANVISA receives the payment, they already release your number so you can start selling. So this helps a lot of company. I would say 60% of the devices are on the low risk range. Yeah, so this helps a lot of companies to get to the market faster, exactly. And the addition with the MDSAP for the high risk devices helps a lot. So people that are automatically Canada is the country that it's the only country that MDSAP is mandatory. So if you are selling in Canada, you automatically requires MDSAP. So because MDSAP is only applicable for Canada, which is a mandatory requirement, and the program works like whatever you are selling. If you are selling over the 5 countries member of the MDSAP, you need to comply with those regulations. So if you are selling Canada and have the MDSAP and you're coming to Brazil, you will have to amend your MDSAP and include Brazil because it's a country where you're selling. The way, if you are selling Canada and move to the US, you have to add 21 CFR 820 to the scope. So the MDSAP help it a lot because it's just one audit organism that goes to your facility, not a lots of inspections for different authorities, which makes everything much more easier for and more, I would say, it makes more sense, right? Because yeah, if you combine all the requirements and just conduct one inspection instead of 5, it saves a lot of time. It's increased efficiency for both the agencies and also for the facilities, which makes more. So for companies that are selling in Brazil, Canada, Japan, so they have a lot of benefits using MDSAP. And for Brazil, it's very much it's very interesting because ANVISA pretty much receives the inspection request and publish automatically. So instead of waiting 1 year, you 1 month, 2 months to have everything published, and then you are ready to proceed with the application submission.
Very good. Very good.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So another very important point that I believe is critical for the audience to understand is that if you have a novel device, make sure you have good clinical data. I would say good is a complete clinical evidence. So I see a lot of companies that has CE marking, for example. When we receive the documentation, we see that there is not enough clinical evidence.
Oh, really? So the
Safety
fact that you
aspect.
already have CE marking
That
doesn't mean
doesn't
that you're gonna
no.
get accepted
Yeah.
because
Now,
of clinical
now
data.
with the new MDR, so things are changing and clinical data becomes a much more strict.
Yes.
But in the
Yeah.
past, with the old rules of MDD, so it wasn't like that. So I saw many companies struggling during the application reviews because they had a novel device without without enough clinical
Great
evidence
point.
to
Great point.
support the application, and
Okay.
it's a lot of money wasted because you lost the time of your regulatory team. You lost the fees you pay for ANVISA for the inspection for the application,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
becomes more complicated. So a good clinical data, in addition, of course, to the safety and effectiveness on the design verification studies, is essential if you are putting on a high risk device. So
Okay.
a lot of our clients, so before even deciding to move to the application, they decide I want to check if my clinical is it's sufficiently good for the application,
Okay.
which is important.
Yeah. And the
Okay.
UMDR will take place this year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually this month, right? The
This
date of
one, May.
application.
Yeah, May
Yes.
20th or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, it was pushed back. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah, go
companies
ahead.
are so with the new regulations in Europe, so companies are now it's more aligned the requirements, but it can be very challenging. Okay, and for
Okay.
example, even if you have a 510K in the US, it does not mean anything because ANVISA goes in
Oh,
a different.
really?
It's a different regulatory
Wow.
system. So FDA relies on substantial equivalence. So you have to show that your device is
Predicate.
similar to
Yeah.
your predicate device. So ANVISA is different. So it's more aligned for the safety for all your devices specifically. So if you're a high risk device, you have to show that your device meets the safety and effectiveness requirements. So for example, in the Europe, you have the general safety and performance requirements, right? GSPDR on the MDR. And in Brazil, you have RDC 56 from 2001, which is our essential requirements. So every time any company submit an application, they have to show objective evidence that they comply with those essential requirements. One of them is clinical and performance and everything else
Yeah.
associated with this.
Wow. So a question that I have, Luis, is about corruption at ANVISA. I hear people saying, "Oh, Brazil is so corrupt, and everything takes forever. It's so difficult to do business in Brazil." Do you feel that way? I mean, do you see
No,
corruption? No, okay,
no, I don't think corruption. I don't think corruption at ANVISA. To be honest
okay,
with you, they are
very
very
good.
independent agents compared to other government authorities, and I never see any types of corruption.
Okay,
You, every time, for example, people have this understanding that they are corrupt. Okay, they will review my application tomorrow, and that doesn't work like that. So, for example, if you submit an application, there is a you have to go to a specific line, and then it is reviewed based on the date that you submit. So you
sure.
go to a line, so and
It's a
then
queue.
it's a
Yeah.
queue.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they also and believe me, they keep improving all the time. So in terms of their understanding of the requirements, because they are part of the IMDRF groups, so they keep evolving uh,
Sure. Yeah,
their
they have to. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
see, this is one of the trends because of the issues we had with the vaccine, the Russian vaccine that was denied.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but I saw those particular evidence, and the issues that they point out was lack of objective evidence. So not, that does not mean that the vaccine doesn't have those evidence. It means that the company did not present to the inspector.
Exactly.
For you to take a
Yes.
regulatory decisions, you need to be based on evidence, right? So if you don't present
Sure.
those evidence or justifications, the regulator should reject your application, because at the end, it's the user that will have a problem
Okay.
with the
Okay.
technology. So in this regard, I have no complaints at all with the
Okay.
agency.
So Luis, let's talk a little bit about something that we mentioned, which is something that I just learned
Hmm.
recently, about a month ago, after doing a project for a client, and which is that economic evaluation that needs to happen in Brazil for high risk devices, right?
Yeah,
Please correct me if I'm wrong. How does it work?
it's called economic monitoring report. So for a specific device, you have to submit to the agency 6 days after the approval. Information about the price you will sell in the market. So the growth range. So a lot of economic information, but this is limited to cardiovascular stent. So there are the pacemakers. So a very few devices that require these submissions. Not every device. Okay, and ANVISA make this public available. So, for example, ANVISA started this regulation with the cardiovascular stents. So now there's a specific site that you can see the pricing depends on the attributes of these stents. For example, if it's absorbable, not absorbable. So depends on the features of the device. You can see on the site what is the price point, because yeah, and for the government this is very important because of the public binders. So as I said, so health is a constitutional right, so the government plays a critical role on the health system, and for them to buy something, they issue a public tender where they yeah, and then they issue the to how much they are willing to pay for that device, and those monitoring, it's actually to help the government to understand how much they expect to invest on this device purchasing.
Yes, yes. So you as a manufacturer have to submit to ANVISA these reports 6 days after the submission of your application for
Yeah,
regulatory
yeah.
approval. It's
After
not that it
approval,
has to go to a third party agency or anything
no,
like that, right?
no,
Ah,
no.
okay.
It's a specific division inside ANVISA.
Oh,
which
it's inside
Yeah,
ANVISA.
yeah, which is different from the division that reviews your regulatory application, and
Okay.
they will actually receive those information, then we'll make the pricing public available, and all
Public. Okay.
your company information in your product information will not be available. What should be available is the pricing, the average
Of the
price.
technology, the average
Exactly.
pricing of the technology. Okay. So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit. We are over 30 minutes. I'm very mindful of your time. But before we close, let's talk a little bit about commercialization. Let's talk about reimbursement. Let's talk about distributors. Briefly, reimbursement. How does reimbursement work in Brazil if I want to enter the market with a newer technology?
The reimbursement is something that I'm very a little familiar with this, but for distributor, I have a lot of experience. So typically,
Okay.
if you are a manufacturer, you want to sell your device, so it's very good to establish a relationship with the partner. So in
Okay.
Brazil, it's possible for you to sell direct to hospitals, which is the best way for manufacturers because they don't need to have a distributor on.
Oh, really? So a
Yeah,
foreign manufacturer can sell
can
directly to a
sell
hospital in Brazil, a
to
public
hospitals,
hospital.
public hospitals,
Wow,
for
that's
example.
great.
Yeah, even
You don't have
private
to have a
hospitals.
local company or anything.
Yeah, you don't have to have a local company. So you have to have a registration. For example,
Yeah.
you need to hire a consulting firm to be your
Yeah. Like
holder.
Emergo, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah. With a registration holder, which is
Exactly.
a local company. Okay.
Exactly. And then they will own the registration and they will qualify any companies that wants
Okay.
to import the device, whether it's a hospital or
Okay.
it's a distributor. And then, as I said, so distributors can be very challenging to select and to work with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes for their lack of infrastructure, or
Mm-hmm.
if you have a specific let's say specific technology that requires a very qualified personnel, let's say to do servicing activities, if he has a medical equipment, for example, can be quite challenging. So it's key for you to understand who is your end user in Brazil, and then you invest the right tools. And if you need a distributor, um, make sure to invest time and selecting the right partner, which, as I said during this podcast, is that they will represent your brand, which is much more than just sell.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so discuss pricing, so which is important because one thing that you want to sell something, but the other thing is the end user will have to pay. That is competition with any place in the world, and then this is a critical. Select a good distributor, and then and for your registration holders, so be very close to them in terms of, especially in terms of changing control. So it's normal that the device change during their life cycle. It's normal. So change sterilization, shelf life extension or reduction. So changing raw materials. So things that improve the technology. But it's
Sure.
critical for you to have a very good relationship with your partner because this can make a lot of problems for you when you try to come the device to bring the device to Brazil. They can be because you have the importation process, so that ANVISA will, if went to the regulation state right channel, which the physical inspection, they will check your device, and if it's
Yeah.
not consistent with what is registered, there can
Mm-hmm.
be a lot of financial loss. So I see a lot of
Good tip.
companies, yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
companies struggling. So even the agency had to change the rules for shelf life. So they made some changes on the importation process and where the company had to include the expiration date of your device. And then when they implement those change, and when the device was inspected in Brazil, they figured out that the shelf life was different,
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
product was stuck on the port, and then you have to,
Customs.
yeah,
Yeah.
customs,
Yeah.
and then you have to pay storage and fees, which is daily.
Of course. That's so
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. So yeah, a good partner, a partner that will actually you have actually you are free to change your partner. For example, if you decide to go to a distributor, make sure to have more than one, or to have
Yes.
agreements with them,
Yeah.
because as I said, if they go out of business, or if you end your relationship with them, you suddenly can no longer ship
Yeah.
device to Brazil, and
Wow.
then this
Okay.
is very critical.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I once interviewed somebody who told me he's an expert in medical device innovation and everything. He said if you choose the wrong distributor, you will probably lose about 3 years of
Yeah,
sales in a country
yeah,
because you have to restart the process again. You may
yeah.
have to re-register the product because sometimes the distributor is the registration holder. I mean, it's a mess.
And also
So
something even more um, difficult, which is your brand. You can damage the brand
Yes,
with the customer.
yes. Very
So
good.
yeah,
Very
so
good
for
point. Yeah.
example, I solve issues with clients that suddenly stop receiving the spare parts for servicing activities, and then
Wow.
this becomes a lot of issues, complaints, and then
Terrible.
for you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
resell again with a different partner, that's gonna be
Yeah.
some
Really
investment needed.
tough.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly.
So what would be, before we close, Luis, what would be the best way, in your opinion, of course, to find a distributor in Brazil?
You have two ways. One is we have some association of distributors, so that these companies can present to you a few distributors and you can select. But it's essential you do a due diligence activity, so understand more about their financial health and also their quality system. If they do have enough so you can make sure that your device will be in a good shape, in good hands, in good hands. So this is extremely critical, and keep keeping a good relationship with the distributors and the registration holder in terms of your changes. This is for you to have avoid problems. This is the best tip. And if you want, for example, to change your plans and come to Brazil, um, evaluate if it doesn't make sense. You have a due diligence investment in Brazil. So before you purchase something, hire specific companies to assist you through the process, because it doesn't mean that if the company have the license, it doesn't mean that they have the quality system, and you can be very surprised. And as I said, depends on where your customer is, you can be in a very tough situation for a tax standpoint or even from a logistics standpoint. So if it's a good tip, so start first with your partner or selling with our consulting firm and selling to multiple distributors, and then move to our next stage, which is and then opening a facility in Brazil and starting selling. And then yeah, and take that in mind if you want to buy some place. So before you are able to issue an invoice, you have to pass through the licensing process. So you have to be licensed in both local and federal authority, which
Oh,
is ANVISA,
okay. State and federal.
state and
Okay.
federal. So you have to be
Wow.
inspected by the local, and also to have the authorization permit, which is called AFE in Brazil. And only after you have the AFE that you are able to actually start selling. And this, yeah, and this could take to 8 to 12 months at least.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, certainly
yeah,
it is pretty much mandatory to hire the services of a consultant
yeah,
who can guide foreign companies into
exactly.
navigating the Brazilian waters, because they seem to be a little different from
Yeah,
other countries in Latin
yeah,
America, complex. And
yeah. Or a
yeah,
consultancy or a distributor. So at the
yeah.
beginning, you need these
You need to
assistants.
assemble a team. Yeah, your
Exactly.
consultant, your registration holder, your distributor, etc.
Exactly. And with the rise of the MDSAP, because as part of manufacturers MDSAP inspection, so they have to show evidence that the Brazilian entity is properly licensed, and also the Brazilian
Oh,
entity is actually submit the required modification applications, for example. So, which
huh.
is why critical to have the right partner to work with you to navigate
Yeah,
everything. So
excellent.
to have a good post market system is actually
Mm-hmm. Yes,
very, yeah,
yes. All right,
very
fantastic.
important.
Well, Luis, we're close to the end of the show. What would be your final words of wisdom to let's imagine you have the CEO of a medical device company who is just starting to understand Brazil, is starting to explore Latin America as a place to do business, is starting to look at Brazil as a potential market. What would be your main words of wisdom to him?
First, understand your customer. So to whom you want to sell the actual device, and then investigate the distribution chain. So if you want to sell straight to the hospitals, or if you need a partner, and then you start assessing assess the costs to go to the market, which is essential, because since you have depends on your device classification, which is the main point. So you want to come to Brazil or to any country in the world, first assess the device requirements. So what do I need to present to the agency to be registered? And then after that, then you start working your distribution chain. So how you are gonna to ship your device, how to become aware of the changes, and communication with your holder, which is very essential. And if you decide to sell work with distributors, how to control them and how to make sure they are taking care of your brand, which is essential. Which is when they sell your device, they are representing your brand. So a good control over those parties is critical to have success in Brazil.
Okay.
A
Is it
good,
mandatory to do a trademark registration in Brazil for your brand or not?
no, for if you have a device trade name, so if you want to make a trade, you have to pass through a specific process to have
Okay.
that the trade. But
Yeah.
it's critical for you to control those
Sure.
aspects. It's very
Yeah.
very
But it's
important.
not mandatory. It's optional. If you want to register in Brazil your trademark,
Yeah, it's optional. It's not
it's
not
optional. Okay. Okay. Okay.
exactly.
Good.
But
I mean,
for,
the reason I
yeah,
ask is because in Colombia, for example, if you want to register a drug, it's mandatory to trademark the name of the drug.
no.
So, okay.
This is not the only rules that you cannot use the same trade name as if a competitor already
Sure.
has a trade protection over that specific
Yeah, of
name.
course. That's, yeah, okay. If
Yeah,
you
this is
decide to trademark in
exactly.
Brazil.
So understand the device requirements and control over the your partners that you have to work with. It is critical. So if you
Yeah.
are pretend if you want to show your device in a trade show, for example. So check if it makes sense for you to register first, because it doesn't matter you show us something that
Yes,
you cannot
yes. Good
sell.
point. Exactly. Good
So
point.
it,
And you can name many importers, right? In the registration, you
exactly,
can add or remove importers. The key is to have a very good registration holder so that you have
exactly.
total control over the title of
You
that.
can even have more than one registration holder in Brazil for your
Oh,
same device.
really?
You can even
Oh,
have this,
okay.
and you can
Okay.
diverse your strategy. So,
Very
but
good.
controlling those aspects is
Yes.
critical
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the success.
One thing that I say to my clients is in a new market like Brazil, for example, you have to know your market better than your distributor sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the distributor,
Absolutely.
correct me if I'm wrong, and you were a distributor, you know what I'm talking about. The distributor isn't always aligned with your interest as a manufacturer. The distributor may tell you one part of the story. I
Exactly.
mean, the part of the story that benefits him or
Yeah.
her, but
And
it's
also
different.
even worse. So, for example, your customer may have a lot of inputs to even improve your device.
Yes,
For
yes.
example,
Um,
you can even try to understand a new different intended use that you may want to navigate, or different design changes in your device. So your
yeah,
customer is key for you to receive those feedbacks. So it's critical
yeah,
for to improve your technology, and a good relationship with the customer is it's a cycle. So a good customer, you have a good selling process. You reduce cost of non-conformities. You have to ship new devices for due to
yeah,
complaint. So and action in terms of field safe corrective action. So it's actually a very important point. So a good partner will ensure you have proper traceability, which is essential for you if you have an issue with your device, to work as fast as possible to mitigate those risks on the market and make the device safer again to your end user.
fantastic, Luis. Luis, I can't thank you enough. I mean, you've been very helpful to me for my own understanding of Brazil, to the audience. I also thank Emergo for facilitating this recording of this podcast, and I'm sure listeners got a lot out of it. And I look forward to being in touch. And thank you again.
I'm glad. I hope this was beneficial to all your audience, and look forward to see you again.
Excellent,
Okay.
Luis. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Take care.